Welcome to the Dreaming Atlas. I am your guide. Tonight, we are leaving the noise of the day behind. Now, find a comfortable position, let your shoulders drop, and let's open the map to a place where you can finally rest. In the misty mountains of old Japan, where bamboo forests whisper secrets to the wind, and rivers carry the memories of 1,000 years. Stories have been passed down like precious heirlooms. These are tales of kindness rewarded, of magic hidden in the ordinary, and of the deep connection between humans and the natural world. Tonight, let us walk together along an ancient path, where three stories intertwine like the branches of a sacred tree. Our journey begins on a winter evening, when snow falls soft as silk upon a small village. An old man named Yohei walks home along a frozen path, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. He is poor but kind-hearted, living alone in a modest cottage at the edge of the forest. Suddenly, he hears a sound, a cry of distress. There, trapped in a hunter's snare, struggles a beautiful crane, its white feathers stained with blood. The crane's dark eyes meet Yohei's, and in them he sees such intelligence, such pleading, that his heart breaks. "Poor creature," he whispers, kneeling in the snow despite his old bones protesting. With gentle hands, he loosens the trap and frees the bird. The crane spreads its magnificent wings, circles once above him as if in gratitude, and disappears into the gray winter sky. That night, as wind howls around his cottage and Yohei shivers by his meager fire, there comes a soft knocking at his door. When he opens it, a young woman stands there, delicate as a flower, her dark hair dusted with snowflakes. "Please," she says, her voice like bells, "I have lost my way. Might I shelter here until morning?" Yohei, though he is little, cannot turn away someone in need. "Of course," he says. "Please, come warm yourself." The woman steps inside, and something about her presence fills the cottage with a gentle warmth. Her name, she says, is Tsuru. As days pass, she asks if she might stay longer. And Yohei, whose cottage has been lonely for so many years, agrees gladly. Soon they marry, and for the first time in his long life, Yohei knows happiness. But they remain poor, with barely enough rice to fill their bowls. One evening, Tsuru says to him, "I will weave cloth to sell at the market, but you must promise me something." She pauses. Never look into the room while I work. This you must swear. Yohei, puzzled but trusting, promises. Tsuru enters the small weaving room and closes the door. All through the night, Yohei hears the rhythmic clacking of the loom. Though he remembers they had no loom before. When morning comes, Tsuru emerges, her face pale and drawn, but in her hands is cloth more beautiful than any Yohei has ever seen. Shimmering like moonlight on water, soft as clouds. At the market, a merchant pays more gold than Yohei has seen in his lifetime. They have food now, and warmth. But Tsuru grows thinner with each piece she weaves. 3 times she enters that room, and 3 times she emerges more frail. Though the cloth she produces grows ever more exquisite. On the 3rd night, Yohei's curiosity and concern overwhelm him. He approaches the door and, breaking his promise, peers through a crack in the wood. What he sees steals his breath. There is no woman at the loom. Instead, a crane sits there. The same white crane he saved from the trap. With her own beak, she plucks feathers from her body, weaving them into the shimmering cloth. Blood stains her white plumage, and she trembles with exhaustion. Yohei gasps, and the crane turns. Their eyes meet once more, and in them he sees both love and sorrow. The crane becomes Tsuru again, tears streaming down her face. "I am the crane you saved," she says softly. "I came to repay your kindness, to give you comfort in your old age. But you have seen my true form, and now I cannot stay." She pauses. "Know this. You gave me life when you freed me. That gift I will carry forever." Before Yohei can speak, before he can tell her that he loves her regardless of her true nature, Tsuru transforms once more into the beautiful crane. She spreads her wings and flies through the window into the dawn sky, circling once above the cottage, just as she had done that winter day, before vanishing into the clouds. Yohei lives the rest of his days in comfort, thanks to the gold from the enchanted cloth. But his cottage feels empty. And sometimes, on winter evenings, he stands outside and looks up at the sky, hoping to see a white crane flying overhead. There is no woman at the loom. Instead, a crane sits there. The same white crane he saved from the trap. With her own beak, she plucks feathers from her body, weaving them into the shimmering cloth. Blood stains her white plumage, and she trembles with exhaustion. Yohei gasps, and the crane turns. Their eyes meet once more, and in them he sees both love and sorrow. The crane becomes Tsuru again, tears streaming down her face. "I am the crane you saved," she says softly. "I came to repay your kindness, to give you comfort in your old age. But you have seen my true form, and now I cannot stay." She pauses. "Know this. You gave me life when you freed me. That gift I will carry forever." Before Yohei can speak, before he can tell her that he loves her regardless of her true nature, Tsuru transforms once more into the beautiful crane. She spreads her wings and flies through the window into the dawn sky, circling once above the cottage, just as she had done that winter day, before vanishing into the clouds. Yohei lives the rest of his days in comfort, thanks to the gold from the enchanted cloth. But his cottage feels empty. And sometimes, on winter evenings, he stands outside and looks up at the sky, hoping to see a white crane flying overhead. The crane's story reminds us that gratitude can take many forms, and that some gifts come at great personal cost. But kindness, like ripples in a pond, spreads outward in ways we cannot always see. In another village, not far from where Yohei lived, there was a young man who was about to learn this very lesson. In the mountains lived a stonecutter named Taro. Each day, he would climb the rocky paths with his hammer and chisel, cutting stone for temples and homes. It was honest work, but hard, and Taro's hands were rough and calloused. One summer day, as he worked, a wealthy merchant passed by in a fine palanquin carried by servants. The merchant wore silk robes and held a fan decorated with gold. Taro stopped his work and sighed. "If only I were a rich merchant," he said aloud. "Then I would not have to break my back cutting stone in the hot sun." Now, in that mountain lived a spirit who heard the stonecutter's wish. Taking pity on him, the spirit granted it. In an instant, Taro found himself dressed in silk, riding in a palanquin, with servants attending to his every need. For a time, Taro was content. But one day, as he traveled, the sun beat down mercilessly. Even with servants fanning him, even in the shade of his palanquin, the heat was unbearable. He looked up at the sun, blazing in the sky, powerful and unchanging. The sun is mightier than any merchant, Taro thought. If only I were the sun, then I would be the most powerful of all. The spirit heard and granted his wish. Taro became the sun, burning bright in the heavens. He shone down on merchants and emperors alike, and all wilted before his power. He was content. Until one day, a cloud drifted between him and the earth, blocking his rays. A cloud can obstruct the sun? Taro wondered. Then the cloud must be more powerful than I am. He pauses. I wish to be a cloud. Again, the spirit obliged. As a cloud, Taro floated across the sky, blocking the sun, bringing rain wherever he desired. He felt mighty indeed, until the wind came and blew him across the heavens, scattering him, pushing him wherever it willed. The wind is stronger than the cloud, Taro realized. I must become the wind. As the wind, Taro howled through valleys and over mountains, bending trees, stirring up the sea. Nothing could stand before him, until he came to the great mountain where he once worked. He blew against it with all his might, but the mountain did not move. It stood firm and unshakable. The mountain is the most powerful of all, Taro thought in awe. I wish to be the mountain. The spirit granted this wish as well. As the mountain, Taro stood tall and proud, unmoved by sun, cloud, or wind. Nothing could affect him. He was eternal, unchanging, the mightiest thing in all the world. But then, one morning, he felt something. A tapping at his base. A tiny, persistent sound. Looking down, he saw a stonecutter, hammer and chisel in his rough hands, cutting away pieces of the mountain, day by day, stone by stone. And Taro understood. The stonecutter, humble and small, could do what sun, cloud, wind, and mountain could not. The stonecutter could change the mountain itself, one chip at a time, through patience and honest work. I wish, Taro thought, to be a stonecutter once more. The spirit, who had been waiting for this moment, granted his final wish. Taro found himself again on the mountainside, hammer in hand, calluses on his palms. But this time, he smiled, for he understood that he had always possessed something more precious than power. The ability to create, to work, to make his mark upon the world through his own effort. And from that day forward, Taro cut stone with gratitude in his heart, content with who he was. Like the stonecutter, we often chase after things we think will make us happy, only to discover that what we seek was already within our grasp. But some lessons come not from wanting more, but from seeing the magic in what we already have. Long ago, when the moon was young and the earth was closer to the heavens, there lived an old bamboo cutter and his wife. Each day, the old man would venture into the bamboo forest, cutting the tall stalks to sell at market. They were poor but content, though they had one sorrow. They had no children. One autumn evening, as golden light filtered through the bamboo grove, the old man noticed something strange. One stalk glowed from within, pulsing with a soft, ethereal light. When he cut it open, he gasped. Inside, sitting on a bed of silk, was a tiny girl no bigger than his thumb. Perfect in every way, radiating gentle luminescence. A gift from the heavens, he whispered, cradling her in his palm. He carried her home to his wife. And as they watched in wonder, the child began to grow. Within 3 months, she had become a beautiful young woman, so lovely that she seemed not quite of this earth. They named her Kaguya-hime, Princess Kaguya, the Shining One. And strange fortunes followed her arrival. Each time the old man cut bamboo, he found gold within the stalks. Soon, the poor bamboo cutter and his wife lived in a fine house. And Kaguya-hime grew in grace and beauty. News of her extraordinary beauty spread across the land. Suitors came from far and wide. Princes, nobles, even the emperor himself sought her hand. But Kaguya-hime would gaze up at the moon with sad, distant eyes, as if remembering something far away. Something the old couple could not understand. "I cannot marry any earthly man," she would say softly, "for I am not meant for this world." 5 noble suitors, the most powerful men in the land, declared they would not give up their pursuit. Day and night they kept vigil outside her home, composing poems, bringing gifts. The old bamboo cutter worried. How could he refuse such powerful men? But Kaguya-hime, with wisdom beyond earthly understanding, set each suitor an impossible task. To one, she said, "Bring me the stone begging bowl of the Buddha from India." To another, "Bring me a jeweled branch from the legendary island of Horai." Each task was carefully chosen, each impossible to complete. One by one, the suitors failed. Some tried to deceive her with false treasures. Others gave up in despair. But their failures only deepened Kaguya-hime's sadness, for she knew why she could not love them. She did not belong to this world. Then came the night of the full moon in autumn, and Kaguya-hime's sorrow became unbearable. Tears streamed down her face as she gazed at the bright silver disk in the sky. "Father, Mother," she said to the old couple who had raised her, "I must tell you the truth." She pauses. "I am not of the earth. I came from the moon, sent down as punishment for a transgression. But my time here is ending. When the next full moon rises, the moon people will come to take me home." The bamboo cutter and his wife were heartbroken. The old man went to the emperor himself, begging for protection. "Station your army around my home," he pleaded. "Do not let them take my daughter." The emperor, who had also fallen in love with Kaguya-hime's grace and beauty, agreed. On the night of the full moon, 2,000 warriors surrounded the bamboo cutter's house. Their bows ready, their swords drawn. But when the moon rose full and bright, a heavenly light descended from the sky. The warriors found they could not move, could not draw their weapons. A procession of moon people, dressed in robes of light, descended on clouds. They brought with them the robe of feathers, a garment that, once worn, would make Kaguya-hime forget all earthly attachments, all earthly love. "No," cried the bamboo cutter. "Please, let her stay." Kaguya-hime embraced her earthly parents one final time, tears falling like rain. "I did not wish to leave you," she whispered. "You gave me love. You gave me a home. But I cannot resist the call of the moon." Before she donned the robe of feathers, she wrote a letter to the emperor. And with it, she sent the elixir of immortality. "I cannot stay," her letter said. "But I do not wish you to suffer. Drink this, and live forever." But the emperor, reading her words of farewell, his heart breaking, said, "What is the point of living forever if I must live without her?" He ordered his men to take the letter and the elixir to the highest mountain peak, the mountain closest to the heavens, and burn them so that the smoke might reach Kaguya-hime in the moon. And so they did. The mountain where they burned the elixir was named Fuji, meaning immortal. And to this day, it is said that smoke once rose from its peak, carrying the emperor's grief to the Moon Princess. As for Kaguya-hime, she wore the robe of feathers and forgot all earthly sorrow. But sometimes, on autumn nights when the moon is full, people say they can see her silhouette upon its surface. And they wonder, does some small part of her remember the old couple who loved her? The life she lived on earth? From the heights of heaven, let us return to earth, to the forests and fields where spirits dwell in every stone and stream. For in Japan, the world is full of yokai, strange creatures and magical beings. Some are dangerous, but others teach us unexpected lessons. In a village beside a rushing river, there lived a farmer named Genzo. He was a hard worker, but he had one great fear: the river. For in that river lived a kappa, a water spirit with a turtle shell on its back, webbed hands and feet, and a dish-like depression on its head that held water. Without water in that dish, a kappa would lose its power. Kappa were known to be mischievous and sometimes dangerous, pulling people and animals into the water. So Genzo always gave the river a wide berth, even though it meant a longer walk to his fields. One blazing summer day, as Genzo crossed the bridge, he heard splashing and thrashing below. Looking down, he saw the kappa, but it was trapped. Its shell had caught between two rocks, and the river level had dropped, leaving the water in its head dish dangerously low. "Help me," the kappa called out, its voice gurgling. "If the water dries from my dish, I will die." Genzo's first instinct was to walk away. After all, kappa were dangerous. But he remembered what his grandmother had taught him. All living things deserve compassion. So Genzo climbed down the riverbank. And despite his fear, despite the kappa's sharp claws and beak, he poured water from his own drinking gourd into the creature's head dish. Then, with great effort, he freed the kappa from between the rocks. The kappa, revived, bowed deeply. So deeply that the water in its dish nearly spilled. "You have saved my life, Genzo-san," it said. "By the laws of honor, I am in your debt. I promise you this. I will never harm anyone from your village again. And I will help your crops grow strong." Genzo thought this was just words. But the kappa kept its promise. That year and every year after, Genzo's fields flourished while others struggled. His rice grew tall and full. His vegetables were the largest in the village. And sometimes, in the early morning, he would see small webbed footprints in the mud between his rows. The kappa, true to its word, tending his crops in the night. When other farmers complained of kappa mischief, Genzo's family was always spared. And whenever children from the village played too close to the river, the kappa would splash loudly to warn them away, but never pull them under. Years later, when Genzo was an old man, he returned to the riverbank one last time. "Thank you, my friend," he said to the water. A moment later, a webbed hand emerged from the river, waving once before disappearing beneath the surface. The kappa had kept its promise until the end, as all creatures of honor should. Not all encounters with the spirit world end so peacefully. Sometimes, ignoring warnings leads to consequences most dire. Such was the case with a young samurai, who learned too late that some warnings should never be dismissed. In the mountains of the north, where winter lasts half the year and snow lies deep as houses are tall, there lived a young woodcutter named Minokichi. He worked with an older man named Mosaku, and together they would venture into the forest to cut timber. One winter evening, a blizzard caught them far from home. They took shelter in a ferryman's hut by a frozen river, barring the door against the howling wind, and huddling together for warmth. In the dead of night, Minokichi awoke to a strange sensation. Cold, so cold that his bones ached. The door had blown open, and snow was swirling into the hut. But it was not the snow that made him freeze in terror. A woman stood in the doorway. A woman more beautiful than moonlight on ice, with skin white as snow and lips blue as winter shadows. Her long black hair floated around her as if underwater. Her eyes, when they met Minokichi's, were ancient and pitiless. She moved to where old Mosaku slept and bent over him, breathing upon his face. Minokichi watched in horror as frost formed on Mosaku's beard, his eyebrows, his lips. In moments, the old man was frozen solid, dead. Then the snow woman turned to Minokichi. He could not move, could not speak. She drifted toward him like mist, and he felt her icy breath upon his face. But then, she paused. "You are young," she whispered, her voice like wine through frozen trees. "You are beautiful. I will spare you." She leans closer. "But only if you promise never to speak of what you have seen tonight. Not to your mother, not to your friends, not to any soul. If you break this promise, I will know, and I will return to finish what I began." She pauses. "Do you understand?" Minokichi, barely able to move his frozen lips, nodded. The snow woman smiled. A terrible, cold smile, and vanished into the storm like scattered snowflakes. When dawn came, Minokichi stumbled back to his village, carrying word of Mosaku's death. He said the old man had frozen in the storm, and though people asked many questions, Minokichi spoke not a word of the snow woman. A year passed, then another. Minokichi thought often of that terrible night, but kept his promise. Then one spring day, he met a young woman named Oyuki traveling through his village. She was beautiful, with pale skin and dark hair, and something about her made his heart both race and ache. They fell in love. They married. Oyuki bore him children, 10 in all, and they lived happily together for many years. She seemed never to age, always remaining as beautiful as the day they met. But Minokichi, in his happiness, did not question this strange fortune. Then came one winter night, 20 years after his encounter in the storm. The children were asleep, and Minokichi and Oyuki sat by the hearth. The firelight played across her face, and suddenly, a memory struck Minokichi like lightning. "You look so beautiful in this light," he said softly. "You remind me of something, someone I saw once, long ago. A woman more beautiful than anyone I'd ever seen, during a terrible blizzard. Oyuki's face went still. Her eyes, when they met his, were suddenly ancient and cold. "You promised," she whispered. "You promised never to speak of it." Minokichi's blood turned to ice as he recognized her. His wife, his beloved Oyuki, was the Snow Woman. "I should kill you now," she said, standing. Frost began to form on the windows, and her breath misted in the suddenly frigid air. "You broke your promise." But then, she looked at the sleeping children, their faces peaceful in the firelight. Tears, actual tears, formed in her eyes, though they froze upon her cheeks. "But I cannot," she said, her voice breaking. "I have lived as a human woman. I have loved as a human loves. These children, they are mine as much as yours. For their sake, I will spare you once more." She moved toward the door, and with each step, she became less solid, more like mist and snow. "But I can no longer stay. If I remained, knowing what you know, I would bring only winter into your hearts." She pauses at the door. "Raise our children well, Minokichi. Tell them their mother loved them." The door opened, and a gust of snow swirled through the room. When it cleared, Oyuki was gone, and Minokichi was alone. He never saw her again, though sometimes, on the coldest winter nights, when snow fell thick and soft, he thought he saw a pale figure standing at the edge of the forest, watching the house where her children slept. The Snow Woman's tale reminds us that love can bloom in the strangest places, even between worlds. But some bonds are tested not by cold or separation, but by greed and cruelty. There once lived an old man who was kind to all creatures. Each day, he would scatter rice for the sparrows, speaking to them gently, delighting in their songs. One small sparrow in particular became his friend, hopping onto his shoulder, eating from his hand. But the old man's wife was a different sort of person. She was greedy and ill-tempered, resenting every grain of rice her husband gave to the birds. One day, the old man's sparrow found where the wife had been preparing starch for washing clothes. The hungry little bird ate some, not knowing any better. When the wife discovered this, she flew into a rage. "Wicked bird," she screamed. And before the old man could stop her, she caught the sparrow and cut out its tongue with her scissors. Then she threw the injured bird out into the cold. The old man was heartbroken. He searched everywhere for his little friend, calling and calling. Finally, deep in the bamboo forest, he found a beautiful house he had never seen before. When he knocked, the door opened, and there stood his sparrow. now transformed into a woman in a lovely kimono, able to speak despite her injury. "Dear friend," she said, bowing, "welcome to my home. You have been so kind to me always. Please, rest here and let me show you hospitality in return." The sparrow and her family served him a magnificent feast and entertained him with music and dancing. When it was time to leave, the sparrow brought out 2 baskets, one large, one small. "Please, take one as a gift," she said. "Choose whichever you prefer." The old man, humble as always, chose the smaller basket, not wishing to burden his old back. He thanked the sparrow family and walked home. When he opened the small basket, he gasped. It was filled with gold, silver, and precious jewels. A fortune beyond his wildest dreams. His wife, seeing this treasure, immediately demanded to know where it came from. When she learned of the sparrow's house and the 2 baskets, her eyes glittered with greed. "I will go myself," she declared, "and I will take the large basket." She hurried to the bamboo forest and found the sparrow's house. Without courtesy or greeting, she demanded the gift basket. And when offered a choice, she snatched the largest basket before anyone could speak. "This is what I deserve," she said, and rushed home, the heavy basket on her back. But when she opened it in her house, expecting mountains of treasure, something very different emerged. Out poured demons and monsters, goblins and spirits, all shrieking and howling. They chased the greedy woman round and round her house, nipping at her heels, until she collapsed in exhaustion and fear. When the chaos finally ended and the spirits vanished, the wife was left with nothing but bruises and regret. The treasure the old man had received remained, but she had learned a hard lesson. Greed brings only suffering, while kindness and humility bring blessings. From that day forward, the wife treated the sparrows more kindly. Though the little tongue-cut sparrow never visited their home again. Some lessons, it seems, are learned too late. And so, dear travelers, we have journeyed from the moon to the snowy mountains, from river spirits to enchanted sparrows. Each story holds a mirror to our own hearts, showing us the consequences of our choices, the power of our compassion, the importance of keeping our word. Princess Kaguya returned to the moon, yet left love behind. The kappa honored its debt for a lifetime. The snow woman chose love over vengeance. And the sparrow showed us that kindness is rewarded, while greed brings only emptiness. These tales, woven like threads in a tapestry, remind us that magic exists not just in the stories themselves, but in the wisdom they carry across the centuries. Rest now, and let these stories drift through your dreams, like cherry blossoms on the wind, until our next journey together.